From the Victory Studios in downtown Little Rock, this is Capitol View with your hosts, Roby Brock and David Goins.
And good Sunday morning to you. Welcome into Capitol View. I'm David Goins.
And I'm Roby Brock. Thanks for joining us. We are joined this morning by Congressman Tom Cotton. He represents Arkansas's 4th Congressional District. Thank you for being with us, Congressman.
Thank you, Roby. Great to be with both of you.
Absolutely. Well, a busy week in Washington. Obviously, you had a lot of votes on Wednesday night. I want to start there with the Farm Bill. A lot of people hear, you know, the idea of a Farm Bill is it's strictly dealing with farmers, but obviously some of the votes that came on Wednesday night kind of split differently. Obviously, you have the Farm Bill, but then you also had that issue with some of the issues with food aid and...
Yeah. So last month, I voted against a food stamp bill. It was known as the Farm Bill, but 80% of all the funding was for the food stamp program. And this has really been a problem for 40 years in Washington, D.C. You have a Farm Bill that should be designed, I should say, to focus on farmers. But 80% of the funding is on food stamps. So what we did this month, just a couple days ago, was to split out the food stamp program so we can have a farm bill that actually focuses on farmers. And I think this is a great, actually historic week for Arkansas farmers, because we finally have a bill where we can focus on the policies that matter to Arkansas farmers. We'll debate the food stamp program later in the year, but right now we have a farm bill that's passed the House that is designed to aid farmers.
I've talked to a lot of folks with agricultural interests that represent agricultural interests that were not happy with the split of the two bills. They feel that they needed to be coupled politically so that you would have urban legislators who obviously deal more with the food stamp program supporting an agricultural rural farm bill. How do you address that concern?
And I've heard that as well. I spoke with lots of leaders of farm organizations, but I've also spoke with lots of farmers all across Arkansas. And the farmers with whom I speak are tired of being held hostage to the food stamp program, which is deeply in need of reform because there are so many abuses. There's so much waste in that program. So by dividing the food stamp program from the Farm Bill, we're able to focus on actual farming policy now. And I think we just disproved this past week that you need that kind of coalition that's been in place for 40 years to pass a Farm Bill. So for the first time, we've been able to change the way Washington works. And I think that's what the people of Arkansas elected me to do in Washington.
Does that version of the Farm Bill get to the president's desk?
I believe there's a very strong chance it should. The Senate passed a Farm Bill that's primarily a food stamp bill last month. Again, almost 80% of the funding is food stamps, but the farm policies in the Senate version and the bill that we just passed are very similar. There's no reason, in my opinion, that the Senate shouldn't agree that we're all aligned on farm policy. Let's pass the farm policies, let's send it to the President for his signature, and then we can have the debate about the food stamp program later this year.
Well, let's talk about what is in that farm bill in terms of money, because you wrote in an op-ed in late June in the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette that the bill cost too much for Arkansas taxpayers and provided too little for Arkansas farmers. You were talking about the first combined farm bill. This separated farm bill still has pretty much the same amount of money for Arkansas farmers, yet you said it was too little for Arkansas farmers then. Why is it more for Arkansas farmers now?
So, Roby, you're right that it still will result in, roughly speaking, the same amount of money going to Arkansas farmers who benefit from these programs. But you have to compare the cost of the overall bills. Because the food stamp bill was 80% food stamps, almost $750 billion of food stamps out of $940 billion total, that meant the percentage that Arkansas farmers were receiving was very, very small, less than 1%. But when you remove that food stamp program, the cost now is less than $200 billion. So when you weigh the costs and the benefits, as we have to do in all laws, you see that the benefits are much greater for Arkansas farmers in this bill.
Well, not to get too far down the number wormhole, but let's say you take that $750 billion for food stamps out of it. You say you'd like to see food stamp happen later on with some of the spending that's going to happen. Do you see that $750 billion shrinking?
I think we can shrink that over the next several years. And it's not so much about cutting food stamps, it's about reforming the rules for food stamp eligibility. Right now, we've all been in a situation where we stand in the grocery line at Walmart or at Brookshire's and someone has steak in their basket, yet they have a brand new iPhone and they're going out to a brand new SUV, when families are struggling to put hamburger on the table for their own families and the person with the steak is using a food stamp card. So we'll change the rules to eligibility to make sure that we get food stamp aid to the families that need it most, those who are most in need, the elderly who are in need, or people who are in transition and that's not susceptible to that same kind of abuse and waste.
Is that not an exception to the rule, though? Because if you look at the numbers of the percentage of people in your district, the households in your district on food stamps, it's roughly about 16%, 42,000 households roughly. that median income for those households only $13,600. Are you not turning your back on those people who need food stamps to survive?
No, Roby, a lot of people in that 16%, which is roughly in line with the national average, do need food stamps. That's a dynamic number. Households come in and out as they move from job to job, and that's where we want to target the aid. But we all know there is some waste and some abuse in that program. You see this in so many government programs. The money is not going to the people who need it most. So we want to reform the program so the rules are going to be more targeted and get it exactly to those who need it most.
So you don't feel food stamp aid goes to those who need it, even though you said the majority of the people that are on food stamps are doing it the right way?
The food stamp aid, it does go to some of the households that need it most, but because the rules are so loose, because the Obama administration has loosened the rules to such a great degree, it does go to a lot of households that don't need it, who are abusing the program, or it goes towards waste. This is not as bad in Arkansas as it is in other states, like California, for instance, but Arkansas taxpayers are still footing the bill for that overall $750 billion program.
Let's shift gears a little bit. The word on the street is that you may be a U.S. Senate candidate in 2014. Tim Griffin said about a month and a half ago on our TV show that he believes that we'll have an outstanding U.S. Senate candidate. I believe that person will be Tom Cotton. I believe he will win. Do you share his confidence?
You must not live on 2nd Street in Dardanelle like I do. I appreciate Tim's kind words. He's a good friend. And I appreciate the encouragement and support I get from Republicans and Democrats alike all around the state. But right now I'm focused on the work that the people of Arkansas sent me to Washington to do.
There's not a time frame for considering this decision.
There's no time frame, but we've got 3 weeks left until our August recess. That's a traditional break in the legislative session. We've got a lot of important bills coming up. We've had a lot of important bills with a lot of big work behind us, like this historic victory on the Farm Bill. So I'm really very focused right now on the work that the people elected me to do.
Is there somebody on 2nd Street in Dardanelle that doesn't want you to run for Senate? Do you need to do some tighter canvassing? I mean, what,
But you can do some in-the-field reporting if you go there.
Well, I think we might have to do that. Congressman Cotton, thank you very much. We will obviously have much more as we progress through this morning, and we'll be back for another block, right?
All right, I'm Roby Brock alongside David Goins. You're watching Capitol View on Sunday morning on KARK.
I don't think it's going to be an easy conversation because they are very strong-willed. I think it's going to be important to us that we know that you're somewhere in a facility that looks after you, has compassion, has care, and you respect it. I mean, I'd love to look after them, I'd love to be able to take care of them, but I don't think I could. That'd be a wrong choice on my part.
Arkansas's skilled nursing and assisted living centers provide quality care for our seniors.
Farm Bureau helps protect its members in more ways than you might think. They've always been the voice of agriculture in Arkansas, working on behalf of folks like me when nobody else would. And Farm Bureau stands for the values that Arkansas families care about. They've protected my right to farm and make a living, which helps everybody who likes food on the table. You know what they say, Arkansas counts on agriculture, and agriculture counts on Farm Bureau.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
Welcome back to Capitol View. I'm Roby Brock.
And I'm David Goins, rejoined by Congressman Tom Cotton from the 4th District, kind of pivoting from, a couple domestic issues. Obviously, we talked a lot about the Farm Bill before the break. Looking now at immigration reform, obviously the Senate kind of did their comprehensive approach. There was kind of this general consensus a few weeks ago about the House passing a variety of bills, and then they go together in what's called conference. But your editorial on Wednesday definitely painted a different picture. From your perspective, what direction does this need to go in?
Well, David, the House will reject not just the Senate bill, but the Senate approach, because I believe the American people reject it. The Senate approach is legalization first and enforcement later, maybe. And if we take that approach, we'll repeat the mistakes of 1986 when we granted amnesty and we never received any enforcement. That means that we'll have 11 million or 12 million illegal immigrants who become legalized and ultimately become citizens. That amnesty will attract even more illegal immigration because we won't have a secure border. We won't be enforcing our immigration laws internally. We're going to hurt wages for Arkansans who are going to be competing with those new immigrants for jobs. And we're going to undermine the rule of law because there are millions of foreigners who are waiting overseas patiently, obeying our laws, waiting to come here the right way.
Right, and we asked your congressional colleague, Tim Griffin, this last week. How do you define and how do you know when the border between the United States and Mexico is sufficient? How do you determine that?
I mean, I think the simplest solution is to have results, and that's a border fence. The law of the land since 2006, when the Secure Fence Act passed, is that there should be 700 miles of fencing. The Senate bill did not call for any particular fence in any particular place on the border. It threw a lot of money at the border, billions and billions of dollars of technology and new Border Patrol agents. Now that doesn't kick in for several years, in which time the border will remain unsecured. But look, when I was in Afghanistan, when I was in Iraq, we used guards, we used technology to secure the perimeter around our bases, but the first perimeter was always a physical perimeter. It was a fence or it was a wall. We need to finish the fence on the southern border because they work. San Diego saw a drop in illegal crossings from 100,000 to just 5,000 when they completed a fence in the last decade. Israel, earlier this year, just completed a fence along its border with the Sinai. That was specifically directed against illegal immigrants coming to work in Israel. Crossings dropped from 2,000 a month to 2 a month. So we'll know the border's secure when we actually have security at the border.
I want to pull up a pull quote from your Wall Street Journal opinion piece that ran earlier this week. You basically said, if the full House approves such bills related to immigration, they should be sent directly to the Senate for consideration. They should not be handed to a conference committee so that they can be reconciled with the Senate bill. The Senate and House measures are irreconcilable. That's a pretty brazen statement for a freshman congressman to make. I mean, some have described it as my way or the highway. Do you think that's how the founding fathers envisioned Congress to work?
I would say it's the American people's way or Barack Obama and Chuck Schumer's way. Again, those approaches are irreconcilable.
They were both elected by a majority of constituents to their offices.
As was I, as was a majority of Republicans in the House. And we're reflecting the views of our constituents. I received over 1,800 contacts by phone and email and letter about this immigration issue. 1,800 contacts. Only 12 of them asked me to support the Senate bill. That's not even counting all the Facebook comments and all the tweets I got on this. It's not saying my way or the highway, it's saying that these approaches are irreconcilable. You can't have legalization first and enforcement second when the American people demand that we have enforcement first, because they don't have confidence that our government will enforce our immigration laws and secure the border.
Do you have a sense that, that something can get done before y'all recess? Because it seems like this could
I do not believe,
approach.
no. We only have 3 weeks left until the August recess, and there's nothing magic about the August recess either. I mean, once we're back in our districts, back in our home states for 4 or 5 weeks in August and early September, there's still another 15 months of this Congress. There's plenty of time to work on this issue, but we will not rush through anything in the House, whether it's on immigration or anything else. That's how we got Obamacare. That's how we got the new financial regulatory bill. That's how we got the stimulus.
But we remember August recesses. I mean, do you sense that people are going to go home and have town halls, or what do you think?
I hope they do, because the American people, like I said, I believe, are fundamentally opposed to the legalization first, enforcement second model of immigration. And if congressmen and senators spend 4 or 5 weeks at home listening to their constituents, I think you'll see, much like you saw 4 years ago in the August recess of 2009 about Obamacare, the American people speaking out and saying, please, do not grant amnesty first before you are enforcing our immigration laws.
What's to prevent, though, the House from passing this piecemeal approach, sending these different pieces of legislation over to the Senate, no action gets taken, yet at the same time there'll still be the opportunity for conference? You say it's irreconcilable. What's to prevent you from not getting your way on that?
Well, I mean, it's the democratic process. I could always lose, certainly, but I'm going to do the very best I can to try to persuade my colleagues in the House, try to represent my constituents, and try to stand for the rule of law in a public advocacy situation. But again, if we go to conference, I worry that any bill that the House passes could be used as a Trojan horse to force the Senate approach through the House in violation of what the American people want.
Do you think that's the most important part of immigration reform? Because it's not just the fence. I mean, there are a lot of other issues.
No, so people talk about the border security as if that's the only part of immigration enforcement. That's not the case. Over 40% of all illegal immigrants are here because they overstayed a visa. They came to the United States on a student visa or a work visa or a travel visa. And we don't have any effective visa tracking system to monitor overstayers and tell them you've got to leave the country. Nor is it a crime to be here if you stayed on a visa. It's illegal to cross our border, but it's not a crime to overstay a visa. A third important part is employment verification. That's one of the things that attracts illegal immigrants to the country in the first place, just like it attracts legal immigrants. It's the opportunity to come here and work and provide for your family and provide a better future for your children. We need a working employment verification system that's user-friendly for the biggest of businesses down to the smallest of businesses.
We've got about 60 seconds left. There's been a television ad that's been running against you, basically saying a variety of negative things, that you love the glitz. You're on Capitol View. We understand that that's glitz enough for some people there. What's been your response to this ad?
You know, Roby, I was an Army Ranger. I fought in Iraq and Afghanistan. I faced some real bullets, so a few metaphorical bullets in politics don't really bother me that much. And frankly, I don't think Barack Obama and his liberal buddies worry about where I say things, whether it's on your TV show, whether it's on the House floor, whether it's in a diner in Magnolia. They worry about what I say, making the case against Obamacare, making the case against this immigration bill. And the more they criticize me for it, the more I'm going to say it.
You realize that if you run for the U.S. Senate, you'll have a few more bullets coming your way. You ready for that, if that should happen hypothetically?
I have a pretty thick skin. I got that growing up on a farm in Dardanelle, and it was made thicker by my drill sergeants in the Army.
I'll give you one last chance. U.S. Senate, yes, no, maybe.
I'm eager to do the work in the House that people elect me to do.
I did not hear a yes, no, or a maybe answer.
Decent poker face. We'll let that be the ending point for today. Congressman Tom Cotton, thanks very much.
Thanks for being with us.
Robert, David, thank you.
All right, political headlines from a busy week in Arkansas politics is coming up next. Exxon says it knows what caused the March oil spill in Mayflower.
I'm David Goins alongside Roby Brock. You have the Capitol View on Sunday morning on KARK.